This is Successfully Retired with Hamilton Brandenburg. Okay, today we've got Dan Thrailkill, co-founder of Front Porch Advisors. So Dan is a Woodstock, Georgia entrepreneur, community volunteer, and somebody who I think cares a lot about healthy, intentional living. He is a husband and a father to two adopted sons. And for as long as I've known him, he's been a very visible member of the community, of just bringing people together and trying to make the community what that word means, which is, a community, people where, somewhere where people are fellowshipping, coming together, sharing ideas, networking, and making the whole place a little bit better. So welcome, Dan, to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Hamilton. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Great. So I like to lurk on the corners of the internet where there's cool blogs. And I recently came back full-time to Cherokee County, moved back here. And you've got a blog you've been writing. How long have you been writing My Common Sense?
Off and on since roughly 2018. I'd go on a period of a few months, write a bunch, and then I got busy and didn't write for a while. And then I transitioned platforms. I didn't like it. Finally, kind of have found the home at Substack, so I started writing a lot more recently.
That's awesome. So one of the ones that you wrote that I really enjoyed recently, and this may be that I've just been reading too much Thomas Sowell and stuff like that, but Navigating the Housing Maze, Lessons from Burlington's Experiment and Why Cherokee County Should Steer Clear. Now, I'm going to do something that probably every seasoned financial advisor who has more years under his belt than I do would say, don't ever do. And I'm going to use my platform to talk about politics in a way, but we're not going to talk about before everyone cringes or decides that they want to hate me. We're not going to talk about national partisan politics that we don't really have a huge control over. The president, this, and Congress, that. We're going to talk about something that I think is really important. And a lot of my retired clients actually really start caring about, which is local politics. Really just what are the decisions that we make as a local community on how to address the things that we're dealing with? And as certain solutions are proposed, how should we evaluate those so that we can support the good ideas and oftentimes maybe weed out the bad ideas that might sound good to begin with? So with that, let's kind of get into your blog post. Tell me why did you want to tackle this issue?
Well, this is something I've been looking at for probably the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
I've attended a few of the housing forums that have either been put on by the Cherokee Board of Realtors or actually the Cherokee Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
The Chamber of Commerce had one that was really beneficial as part of their regional issues series. They have it, I think, once a month or every so often, hosted in Woodstock. They'll bring a different topic to each of their regional issues. The first one I went to, they brought, I can't remember what his name was. It's on another blog I wrote, so I'll have to go look it up. But he's one of the guys that basically runs the Atlanta Regional Housing Authority or does something like that.
Okay.
And they have used community land trusts to go out and acquire things and build things that are quote unquote affordable. And the funniest part of his presentation was affordable housing is expensive.
Talk about
that makes no sense.
Talk about a contradiction in terms right there, right?
Yeah. And then, I respect all of our local leaders here in the county, Chairman Johnson, Richard Weatherby, all of our commissioners. A lot of them are personal friends. And I appreciate what they're trying to do here. I do.
Yeah.
I don't believe any one of them is kind of going back and trying to do something kind of old Cherokee County where it was, hey, let's do this to rub the shoulders of the developers and kind of see what happens in the future. I don't think anything like that's going on here.
Sure.
But I do think that this is kind of, hey, let's do something instead of nothing.
Yes.
And in some cases, if the something you're going to do is actually worse than doing nothing, you might not want to do anything.
Yeah. Sometimes I think when you're facing, that's really interesting when you talk about it, when you're facing a crisis or maybe not even a crisis, but just a problem.
Predicament.
Yeah. Any kind of problem or predicament. And I see this, this is just classic, probably like 101 of behavioral finance and investing, is that when people start to see volatility that they weren't expecting in the market or just changing conditions, a lot of times there's just this desire, what are we going to do about this? And oftentimes there are things you might want to do, make or adjustments, whatever, but sometimes you have to say, hey, don't just do something, stand there. You what you need to do is remember that you are already prepared. You already had a contingency plan in place, or as I like to say, you already had a roof on your house. You're not going to go up and rebuild the roof in a rainstorm. You already have
Correct.
that, and you need to sometimes you just need to sit under it. And it's hard to not take action if the direction that you need to go isn't really clear. So for my listeners who are maybe less plugged into some of the terminology, can you kind of explain what a community land trust is?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually pull it up. So, a community land trust is a nonprofit organization that acquires and holds land in trust for the benefit of a community, ensuring it remains permanently affordable for housing or other community purposes. And again, when I first read the community land trust kind of stuff coming from the county,
Yep.
I'm probably one of the few under 45-year-olds who actually subscribes to the Cherokee Tribune, our local paper.
Yep.
Support your local paper,
That's
become
right.
a subscriber. It has great local information. And I started reading about this. I'm like, why are we doing this? This doesn't really make any sense.
So basically, a nonprofit, I would imagine, it's established by the local government. And
it can be. It can be private entity as well. So,
okay.
If a group of wealthy business owners were like, hey, we want to help people in our community, want to get together, they can start a community land trust.
And so it basically would set rules and like a structure that would be intended to keep prices at a certain level. So kind of bringing an outside force to maintain a certain price structure.
Well, so in most cases, community land trusts own the land.
Okay.
And they'll give like a 99-year ground lease or something like that for people to build structures on them. So you're subsidizing the cost of the land by owning the land, and then the people who live there own the structure, but they don't actually own the land that it's on. So we're essentially using local tax dollars to combat macroeconomic problems that were caused by a much larger, likely government entity. And I don't know how much time we have today to go into that.
Yeah.
But it's a much more complex problem. And unfortunately, local municipalities like Cherokee County, City of Canton, City of Woodstock, etc., don't have checkbooks like the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't think this is a partisan opinion, but when you when interest rates basically go to 2% on 30-year mortgages, and you flood the market with trillions of dollars worth of stimulus that's going to people's bank accounts, and when both parties pretty much agree that this is what should happen, unsurprisingly, as it would happen, prices start to go up. You increase the monetary supply that much, things start to go up because people are burning that cash and using it. But I know that probably seems really clear in hindsight. But, I think that was probably a hugely unintended consequence of a lot of the COVID policies. But either way, it's kind of like, that's to your point. A lot of times the things that we really want to do to help that sound great and compassionate have these unintended consequences that have a huge ripple effect. I mean, we're talking about this in 2025, and that was five years ago.
If we just completely leave out inflation. And for me, inflation is not the increase in prices, but the increase in the monetary supply. So if we leave that off the table, because that is a whole other, I think, separate conversation.
Yes.
But if you just look at interest rates as a whole, really since kind of 2008, 2007, right before we had the first economic collapse, our goal or the federal policy was just to plummet interest rates to near zero, which made mortgage interest rates really cheap, which is actually not a bad thing if you want to buy a house. But unfortunately, and we're kind of seeing some of this now, it incentivized a lot of larger homes to be built. Because people can afford a larger house because the interest rate is lower.
Yeah, you can go up $50,000 on your purchase price easily when it's adding a couple $100 to your payment at the most, right?
Or more. And so that we saw an explosion in much more large single family homes than kind of what we had seen as traditional single family homes over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And we now have a market flooded with lots of giant houses. And at some point in the future, those folks are going to want to sell. And if you can see right now, just on market conditions, it's kind of difficult to sell your house.
Oh, big time. I'm going to share a screen real quick. And then I'm going to ask you kind of a follow up to that. But can you see this, what I'm sharing?
I can.
Here? Right. So this is new privately owned housing starts in the U.S. Average square foot for one family units. So what you can see, this is going back to the 1990s. So your average new house was just around 2,000 square feet. By the time you get to the mid 2010s, you're looking at 2,700 square feet. And if you take that report, which is, it's kind of hard to piece, the data only goes back so far, but I want to show one more thing here. Where is it? Housing by year built. There we go. All right. So this is an older report. So this is from 2011 by US Census data. And this is your median home size from 1960 to 2009. So if you look at single family homes in 1960, and my parents were raised, they had siblings and they were raised in houses that could essentially fit in. If you took my garage and my kitchen and my office, their whole house could fit inside of that space, right? 1,500 square foot house. By the time we get to 2009, you're pushing 2,000 square feet. And then like I said, by the time you get to 2015, you've almost doubled your square footage from 1960. So,
and I wish I could find a figure like this just for our area, just for kind of North Georgia, Metro Atlanta, and even Cherokee County specifically. I haven't looked at that, but I might have to after we're done.
It's crazy. Yeah, definitely.
I would venture to guess that we're even on the upper end of that average by probably at least 500 square feet would be my guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've driven through, I spent 3 years living full time in my RV, and I have driven through probably about 35 states and spent a lot of time in them. And we have some big houses in Georgia compared to some places, for sure, especially Metro Atlanta.
And so kind of getting back to the community. So there's two different things, and I want to make sure we make a distinction here. There's a community land trust and a land bank.
Okay. Talk about
so a land bank is officially what the county is calling their initiative.
Okay.
But it's not really a traditional land bank. It's more of a hybrid. And I think they're trying to stay away from the term community land trust.
Okay.
I wish they would be a little bit more direct. So a land bank is traditionally like the county will acquire, or the municipality, whomever's involved. In this case, there has to be the county and at least one of the municipalities has to agree to it, to sign on in order for it to get started. They typically buy properties or they acquire properties. They can be gifted properties. So if somebody owns a property and they're like, hey, we don't want to turn it over to the county for tax delinquency, whatever it may be, we're just going to give it to you guys and get out from under it. Maybe they can get a tax deduction somehow from that. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm sure they can figure that out. And then the county would hold on to that. They would repair the blight. Maybe if there's a dilapidated home or a home that is just no longer feasible to be remodeled, maybe they take it down. Maybe they do some other rehab work to it. And then they return that parcel back to a private owner. So they're kind of subsidizing the cost of getting it, fixing it, and then making it good for somebody else to do something with.
So on the surface, this all sounds really great. Talk to me about where this idea came from, and how did it go when it was first implemented?
Well, that's when I started looking at this. I'm like, I wonder where the first one got started. And so I got on my AI and asked, and I was like floored. It was a Bernie Sanders creation. So he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. Don't remember the years, but it was in the 80s, like 83 to 88 or something like that, before he became Senator Bernie Sanders. And he started the first community land trust in Burlington because at the time, Burlington was a very expensive place to live, and it still is a very expensive place to live.
Yeah.
He got it started with $200,000 from the city, which in the 80s was a lot of money.
Yep.
Bought some houses, put them into the land trust or helped develop them, whatever it was. I didn't get into the nitty gritty of how many they built. But now it's huge. It's the largest land trust in the United States. I think they have something like 12,000 units in the trust. And there's got to be some benefit there for the folks that live in these homes.
Yes.
But at the same time, there has not been any noticeable change in the price of a house in that area since the land trust was created. So
not positively anyway. Not a positive one.
So,
can I share that chart from your blog?
Absolutely.
I've got it right
please.
here. I'm going to pull that up because that I think is going to really give a lot of context to what you're saying, because we're not trying to criticize people who want to feel the burn.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about him is that he basically hasn't really changed his opinion or his message from the time he was a mayor to now, which just whether you agree with this politics or not, that's pretty unusual. So this is not to beat up on people who love Bernie or hate Bernie. I don't really have an opinion on that. But look, this is your home prices in the Burlington area, right? From 86 to now, is that what we're looking at?
Yep, that's it.
So at least not a seemingly substantial effect on the average housing price in the market up there.
Well, and I again want to give it a little bit of credit. I wondered what it would look like if the land trust had not been created.
That's
Like,
fair. That's fair.
would it have gone up even more? So there's no way to figure that out because it's already in the market
Sure.
and it's already affected the market. But at the same time, what I'd love to see from the county, and I think I could support this a little bit more if it was more privately run than municipally run.
Yep.
But I love to see, okay, what's the goal for this? How much are they trying to affect the price of a home in our area? Or is that a goal
Yep.
of it? If it's not, then let's talk about that, because that would make no sense to put tax dollars towards something that's not going to have benefit for the entire community.
Absolutely. So do you feel like there have been some unintended consequences in Burlington, or like what are some of the downsides to this other than the fact that it's possible that it might not have had a huge effect on keeping houses affordable? To your point, we don't really know that because it is what it is. We can't see what the past would look like without decisions that have been made. But
correct.
What are some other potential problems with this approach that you would see?
Well, I'm going to call them trade-offs instead of problems.
I like that.
Because that way it's more data driven than, hey, I don't like this thing.
Sure.
When you've got property that is acquired by any municipality, what happens immediately to the property around that is it goes down in value. So those private homeowners who live in kind of in the periphery around some of these land trust properties, their home value went down. So you're actually negatively affecting the value of the homes in that area. And I'd love to look at this. I think I'm correct in saying this. So I'm not 100% positive, but I think the land trust kind of grows in circles. So it kind of acquires other stuff around it. And it kind of makes sense because if you're buying cheap property, cheap land, typically it's going to be dilapidated, in need of repair, or raw.
Yeah.
And unless you're moving closer to an urban area, it's probably going to remain something kind of similar to that. It's not going to, you're not going to butt into like a 50-story building all of a sudden.
Yep.
So
housing prices in the remaining areas, and by extension, wealth creation could be negatively impacted. And I think that's something you talked about that is maybe a big overlooked trade-off, is that think about a lot of here's two facts to consider. Number one, the biggest purchase that most Americans will ever make is their home. And one of, if not the biggest contributor to their net worth and their wealth, at least until they are financially independent, if they're financially independent, will be their home. So you're essentially hamstringing people who are already in lower income areas where maybe they're not making enough to buy, the house. So this is essentially giving them a pathway to ownership, which is great, but it's also giving them a limited upside and slower growth, less wealth creation, which really could kind of keeps them in that same, I guess you could say it keeps them where they started a little bit, while also keeping everybody else back a little bit as well. I mean, is that a harsh thing to say? That's just kind of how it feels.
It is a little bit, and again, that's one of those unintended consequences, one of those trade-off conversations. And you've got some business models, not only in our area but throughout the United States, that have tried to address this, like Habitat for Humanity. And I went to their luncheon earlier in the spring. Great presentation, 100% support what they're trying to do.
Yep.
That makes, because it's a private nonprofit that works very closely with the municipalities, but it is not overseen by a municipality.
Yep.
And the work that they're doing is great. I learned a lot about it. Their homeowners participate in their building process. They have certain criteria they have to meet in order to kind of qualify and maintain that home. And I've met with some of the residents here in our local Serenade Heights in Woodstock. That's a relatively new Habitat for Humanity development. It's great. Like, I
Yep.
fully support all of that. What I get squeamish about is when our local municipalities and governments get involved, because I don't think that's the best way that a government can help with housing costs in an area. And unfortunately, Cherokee County and Burlington are very similar
Yeah.
in kind of the NIMBY attitude, of not in my backyard. The many county residents who are heavily supportive of our local politicians, both financially and socially, um, they don't want density.
Yes.
Density is a bad word. Unfortunately, density is one of the ways that you bring down housing costs. So
Yes.
if you can put more homes on a 1 acre parcel, then the average cost per home is going to be less. And I think one of the easiest ways the county could address this would be to drop the minimum square footage for a single family home from, I think it's 1,200 square feet,
Yeah.
to something much smaller. And then also look at maybe creating some unique zoning, and permitting guidelines, land use guidelines for what we call micro units.
So
And we already,
that's interesting. So talk a little bit about some micro units, like tiny
yeah.
homes,
So no,
not
micro
tiny homes.
units and tiny homes are two different things.
Okay.
So tiny home, we've all seen the shows, get a trailer, build a home on it, live in an RV,
Sure.
whatever it may be. Like, that makes sense for a portion of the population. Micro units are essentially, think like a dorm room on steroids.
Okay.
So they're a small apartment style unit, private bathroom, closet, maybe a small kitchenette. Some of these complexes also have like a shared commercial kitchen where if residents want to go, make something big, they don't
Yep.
do it in their unit. They go to the shared kitchen. They do that, come back to their unit. Very affordable. Those can be rented or they can be sold as condos with a condo association fee of some kind to maintain the common areas. And it allows for that single person, that maybe new couple, whatever it may be, the demographics that all of our housing people are trying to get into homes.
Yep.
It allows them to step into something that's what they need and what they might actually want, because the majority of the new generation doesn't want a 6,000 square foot house.
No, they really don't.
They want something smaller.
And at some point, they just want something, right? So I'm
Yep.
hearing that people are probably going to need to be okay with more density because we do have a growing population that all wants to be here.
Yep.
And the funny thing about supply and demand is, it's like the old beachfront property analogy, right? The government could come in and all of a sudden say, hey, listen, we are going to cap prices on beachfront properties. Now, this is a really extreme example, and I'm not saying that this
Right.
is what community land trusts are doing, but we're going to cap all the prices on, well, that doesn't matter. There's still only so many to go around. So
Yep.
there will be some other mechanism by which only a few people will get beachfront property, right? So we only have so much land available. We're going to have to be okay with some kind of a trade-off. And I think a lot of times people think of prices as like a price is the instigator. And I think price is more of an indicator. Price is that universal language that's telling you the policies that we've had, what have they led up to? What kind of an environment have they created? The policies and the resources that we have had, what have they created? And that's telling us, hey, we have a shortage based on what we're currently doing. There's more houses, or there's more buyers than there are houses. Prices are high. It's expensive. So to your point, one of the ways to maybe address that is to reconsider how we're zoning, and let's allow for some smaller units. Let's allow for some more density. And that is a trade-off to your point. Yes, it means that maybe all of Cherokee County doesn't always look like Mayberry forever with a 2-acre plot and a big front porch and, all that. But it also gets 23-year-olds to be able to afford to buy something. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, right? So,
Well, and I think this is where, again, the kind of larger political conversation, I say larger within our county.
sure.
I think this is kind of the best solution that our current elected officials think they have, so that they're not combating some of the folks that don't want the solutions or aren't interested in the solutions
Yeah.
that they could really focus on that would actually have a larger impact than a community land trust, land bank, or the like. And so I wanted to make sure we got off on that. I forgot to say, The land bank in Cherokee County is more of a hybrid. So they're calling it a land bank. Typically, a land bank turns that property back over to a private owner for development or whatever
Okay.
that private landowner wants to do. In this case, and it's typically land banks are not used for, I'm using air quotes, affordable housing.
Okay.
It's more to repair blight, dilapidated properties. Think Detroit, like
Okay.
certain areas of Detroit, the city bought them in a land bank, demolished everything, and then all of a sudden it became more feasible for a developer to come in, buy the land, and then build a house.
Gotcha.
And I think the city probably subsidized that cost a little bit, but it got that land developed, and then that land is going to have people paying taxes to the city after it's developed. So eventually they're going to recoup the fees, and I'm sure there's an algorithm associated with it. For Cherokee County, the land bank is geared towards affordable housing. So it's kind of a community land trust being presented as a Cherokee regional land bank.
But it's not the same situation of, hey, we're going to take dilapidated things and resell them back to the public. It's more of let's make housing to fix the affordability problem.
They're leading it with that.
Yeah.
But I, like you, like Cherokee County is a in demand place to live. It has high demand, low supply.
Sure.
Or there is supply out there, but it's not the supply people can afford or won't.
Yeah.
So we're still going to have people moving here. It's not going to change anytime soon. So if a developer could come in and buy dilapidated property and make a profit by flipping it or renovating it and renting it out, that's already happened for the most part. There's not a lot of those types of properties in our county other than trailer parks.
Yep.
Other than areas where a lot of folks were already living kind of at the bottom of the economic spectrum.
Yes.
So if we had, again, don't believe we do now, but if we did have a different elected leadership in our area, they might elect just to start, and they're not supposed to do it via eminent domain, but there's a lot of roads that need to be expanded.
Yes.
And if those roads need to be expanded, they're going to have to acquire some of that property. Hey, let's just go ahead and acquire the whole thing, and then we'll do something with that.
Yes.
I could foresee that happening in the future.
Yes, but you always want to build a process and constraints that if you didn't have leadership that had the same values that they do now, that would basically keep the community on the path that you want it to be on and prevent people from taking advantage of overly loose or ambiguous regulations.
Correct. And anytime the government gets involved, it's not making something less expensive.
No.
It's only going to make it more expensive.
Always.
Whether it's local government or regional government or federal government, either one, doesn't matter. You're inserting another cog in the process.
Well, I think the most important thing, what really leads to just on the most basic level to affordability on anything is competition. And so you really have to think, okay, what can I do as a policymaker to increase competitiveness, to make businesses come in and compete for the buyer? And looking at the thing that we looked at the very beginning of the size of houses over the year and seeing how housing sizes have grown from 1960 to now, that could be one, like you said, lowering the minimum size that's needed for a single family unit. There's a lot of couples that could live in a really small house and would love to live in a small house that they own instead of a small apartment that they don't own.
Well, and that's where there's 5 L's that also kind of come correlate to the blog post that I wrote, the 5 L's of housing affordability. Started with 4. This was created in 2018 by a Senate or House in Georgia commission.
Okay.
It was land, labor, lumber, laws were the 4 L's that were controllable or at least influenceable by government. And the 5th one they added later was lending. The 2 L's that are the 2 levers, 2 L's that are most in control with local governments are laws and land. Laws being, zoning, permitting process, etc. What do you have to do in order to build a home in our area in Cherokee County that the government has to give you permission to do? And again, in favor of that, helps to provide some stability in the area and make sure everybody's building stuff. So I'm not against getting rid of that.
We're not anarchists.
There's definitely some ways to make that more affordable and streamlined for developers, for individuals, etc. And then land. we've got some growing municipalities, we've got and some developing municipalities. So you've got Woodstock, Canton, Fall Ground, Holly Springs as the big ones in our area. And then we've got Waleska kind of developing with the university there. And we've got areas like Hickory Flat that are kind of in certain portions of Holly Springs and certain portions in unincorporated Cherokee County. I don't think anybody would be happy seeing a 5 or 6 story micro unit building in downtown Hickory Flat, or what it would be considered kind of downtown Hickory Flat. But that might make sense.
Yeah.
If a developer had the opportunity to come in and maybe at least do a feasibility study to understand whether or not they can make a profit at it.
Yes.
So I think the land use, how the county allocates land use, and also encourages the cities to put more dense developments on as small a portion as possible.
Well, like you said, you're just opening the door to the possibility, and
Yep.
to experimenting, to research, to finding out if it's feasible. I would say, as somebody who lives in Hickory Flat, if they do put 100 or more micro units, I would like just to go on record and say, please put a red light at Stringer Road and Hickory Flat Highway. So that
That's coming. It's in the plan. That's already in the works.
Because it took me over 10 minutes to make a left turn to go to my kid's baseball game at Malden the other day. And I was like, oh my God, my anxiety was just through the roof.
My kids used to take drum lessons at Donnelly's Music right there.
Yeah.
So very familiar with that drive. And there is a light coming. So that's part of the GDOT plan. There's going to be a light there.
Okay.
But the other thing is, and if we're going to do this, like if we're going to open up developments like this to areas like Hickory Flat, we got to have the roads to support the people to get to and from.
Oh, big
time. So I use that as an example, but I think it would make more sense for an area like Woodstock or downtown Canton to put a development, or even maybe downtown Waleska, because there's a lot of college students there.
Yeah.
What would happen if mom and dad, instead of paying for a dorm room, came and bought a condo at $150,000 and sold it 5 years later for $200,000 and took that money and put it towards whatever tuition costs that their kids had to take out loans for? That's what my parents did when my sister went to MUSC in Charleston. So there's different ways to have it make sense for specific communities that will have a demand for that type of housing type. So
I like it. So the answer and I'm going to bring this back to my listener, as I promised I would, for the retiree who is, and I have a lot of them that I know, and a good bit of them live in Cherokee County. Others are just all over the place or in Florida. But for the folks who are retiring and who are all of a sudden, hey, I have all this time, I really care about my community and local politics. I also have children, and I'd like those children to be able to afford a house. What are some ways that they can be involved in being and affecting their local community and affecting their local politics to help encourage a process that is not just let's give the government a little bit more authority and a little bit more power and hope they fix the problem correctly? And I don't mean that with any disrespect to our local leaders.
No, you're good. And I think our local leaders are actually wonderful, because when you reach out to them about a problem you've got, especially if you're constructive in your conversation, they respond and they want to meet with you. So
That's
they
awesome.
are still willing to hear you out. So for your listeners, I would say if they're in Cherokee County, the best thing they can do is there's actually another local housing forum coming up in November that's being led by Brantley Day, who's one of the community development directors for Cherokee County.
Okay.
He used to be with City of Woodstock. Brantley's a great guy. And I have it on my calendar. I'm trying to pull it up now. It's sometime in November. Let's see here. I'll try to, here it is. It is Wednesday, November the 5th at 9 a.m. at the Canton Theater.
Okay.
So again, Cherokee Affordable Housing Forum. It was in an article recently for the Cherokee Tribune. Show up and just listen and offer your opinion. The other thing you can do, and this is kind of the not so fun part, is show up to your planning and zoning meetings, show up to your county commissioner meetings, phone your commissioner, phone your planning and zoning folks, send them an emails. They're all very responsive. I've gotten to know them. I have their personal cell phone numbers. So when I have a question, I just text them.
That's awesome.
And they get back to me typically within a few days. That's still the kind of local government we got, and I hope we continue to maintain that.
That's awesome.
But reach out and learn more. So when you see a development coming to your area that's a single family home development, and you think it's going to be great for your property values, but maybe it's not going to be great for your grandkids to be able to afford a home, go present your thoughts and opinions on that. Because the more people come out that offer their opinion and offer their thoughts, if it's contradictory to what the county elected officials or even executive leadership think should happen, they're going to listen to that, hopefully,
Yes.
and take that opinion to heart, and maybe reroute where the initiative is heading towards something that may be more beneficial to the citizenry that's out there now, that's offering their opinions, which again are different than the maybe the policies that are being looked at.
And you got to really put yourself in the shoes of the local leaders. I mean, these are not bad people this is
No.
not Tammany Hall, right? These are guys who are part of this community, and they are just like,
Yes.
hey, we have this problem, we want to fix it. And they would love feedback. They want
And
feedback, and they want to hear criticism of their ideas so that
and
they
I
can.
respect
And that's
and I
great.
respect I respect Terry Johnson to the nth degree. He's a good dude. I
Yes.
like him.
Yes.
But he says, "Hey, doing something is better than nothing." It's almost a direct quote from him. And I want to look at him and go, "Harry, is it?
Yeah.
Like in this case, is it?" And I don't know.
And that's what they need to hear is feedback from their community saying, we disagree with that, because good leaders are going to take that feedback and listen and adjust from there. But if the whole community is just silently griping, right, and everybody's moaning and groaning, but nobody's being vocal about their opinions to their elected leaders, then it's kind of like not voting and then complaining about who the president is, right?
Well, and me and you at least have enough of a good understanding of economics to not maybe have a formal opinion on something going on, but at least it kind of makes you think about some questions you want to go find out the answers to so that you can formulate an opinion about it. That's not the majority of our community and any community in the United States.
Yeah, that's true.
So right now, everybody's up in arms about affordable housing. Everybody, everywhere, not just here in our area. And so I think our leaders think by stepping up and saying, "Hey, here's what we're doing," planting their flag, they're at least answering their constituency with something. But unfortunately, the majority of the reasons why we have an affordable housing crisis have less to do with land and laws and more to do with lending, labor, fiscal policy, monetary policy, which are not in control at the local level. So it's not sexy local politics.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's such a lagging effect from policies too. You know, it's always easy to look at where are we now and immediately go up and blame or credit whatever administration from a local level to a national level. But really, you see a big lag, and these things happen. I mean, this we'll talk, if we talk national politics, I'm going to go way back to Jimmy Carter. I was reading a book about Jimmy Carter recently because I love to read about dead presidents. And I realized, I was like, man, he's my Georgia president. I've never really read about him. So I had to go to Atlanta for something, and I had like a 3-hour delay. So I went to his presidential library, and that was super cool. And then I started reading a book about him, but I'm like, man, a lot of the inflation that he had to tackle was really due to a lot of Nixon's policy, Nixon pressuring the Federal Reserve, Nixon's
getting away from the gold standard,
Nixon's monetary policy, and then Jimmy Carter comes in from Georgia. And he's horrible at making connections in Washington and befriending anybody. So I think he lost some effect. I say that with a lot of respect. If you're, Jimmy Carter's granddaughter listening to this, I mean, no, but nothing ill about it. But it made it hard for him. And then he's dealing with inflation from something that was way before him. So there's a lagging effect to this. And so bringing it back to full circle, the retiree who's interested in this, learn and read about as much as you can about economics, about the housing market, about what this cause and effect is. Just get into this stuff, get into the weeds on it, try to bolster up your own financial literacy, and not so that you can make a point, but that you can ask better questions of your local leadership and really start to build out a framework where you can start to see, okay, this idea sounds great and compassionate. Is it going to work? And what are some of the trade-offs? Because there is always a trade-off. I like to read Emerson a lot, and I reread some of his essay Compensation yesterday. And a lot of it is really just boils down to, you can't have sweet without sour. You can't have a coin that has two heads and no tails. There's always a trade-off, and you're always in charge of picking and choosing your own trade-offs. So that's my call out to the listeners. Any parting thoughts, questions, anything you want to say before we wrap up, Dan?
Yeah, I just want to give a little quick story. So when Joe and I were building our house here, we were fortunate. We got some land pretty cheap. We were able to build a house. We sold our house in 2013, townhome, and we had to move into an apartment in Town Lake for about 6 months while our house was being finished. And this is where I kind of got my first experience with affordable housing. I'm in a one bedroom apartment, basement level, like in Town Lake. We
Yep.
just wanted to get the cheapest thing we could. We had no kids. The three people that lived above us on either side were all single females of a retired age. It was cheaper for them to live in an apartment than it was for them to live in a house, and they could not afford a retirement community. So they couldn't afford a lot of the fancy assisted living facilities that were going on. They were on the ground level. It was easy for them to get to and from. Trash was taken care of for them. So a lot of those things allowed them to transition into kind of older age. And that was a little eye opening for me.
Mm.
And I think when we talk about things like micro units, there's an aspect of the retired generation as well that could also take advantage of things like that. So I encourage everyone, just like you did for your listeners, to just get involved and pay attention. Because if you are a homeowner in the area, you don't want to see the values in your home go down. You only want to see those go up because that is an asset. And unfortunately, I think some of the things that are going on in our community may cause, not are definitely, but may cause the value in your home to go down, depending on the properties that are acquired by the land bank. So whether it's not you, it might be your neighbor, might be your friend, might be a cousin, might be a church member, whatever it may be. But just go and pay attention. And if you have an opinion, offer it and put it out there so that you can't be, like you said, one of those folks that sits out on the sidelines and after it happens was like, I didn't want this. Well, where were you when this was going on the first time?
That's right. Be vocal, be educated, be part of the community, get outside and meet people and pay attention and keep your head on a swivel. I love it. Thank you for joining me, Dan.
Thank you, Hamilton.
This show reflects the personal opinions and viewpoints of myself, Hamilton Brandenburg, and my guests. Opinions and viewpoints are subject to change at any time without notice. No representation is made as to the accuracy, completeness, or relevance of the information presented. The information discussed is general in nature and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice, so consult with your tax, legal, and financial professionals about your specific situation. Past performance does not indicate future returns, and any indices mentioned are for reference and cannot be invested in directly. Brandenburg Financial Services is a DBA of CS Planning, an SEC-registered investment advisor.